I want to put some stuff down.
Good evening, and thank you for being here this evening as we discuss how smartphones have a negative impact and effect on the youth of our generation. Can you think about the last time that you spent an entire day without using your smartphone? Better yet, can you think of all the ways that a smartphone has made your life more convenient? Now let's flip that for a moment and think about how a smartphone has had a negative impact in your life. That one's a little bit harder to think about. Since 2006, I have worked for a cell phone company, and I have got to witness firsthand the evolution of the smartphone, as well as the direct impact that it's made on the society that we are today. There are alarming studies showing us how the overuse of cell phones can be damaging to our use and thus the future of our world. And although smartphones can come in handy, there is interference causing harmful effects to our youth. First, I will discuss how the overuse of smartphones can negatively impact a young person's physical health. Next, I will discuss how the overuse of a smartphone can have a negative impact on a young person's mental health. And lastly, we will discuss how the usage of a smartphone can negatively impact a young person's social well-being. As I have mentioned, the overuse of a smartphone can impact the physical well-being of a young person. If we think about myself, for example, when I was a young kid and I got bored, I would be told by my mom to go outside and play. And basically that meant that I would run around with my cousins playing freeze tag or hide and seek. But nowadays our youth is spending more time behind a screen, sitting in the same place for hours at a time or laying in the same place for hours at a time. And what we found is that this is creating a rise in obesity amongst our youth. Additionally, there was a study done by Bradbury, Terrell, and Morrison that showed that smartphone use can also lead to a higher consumption in energy drinks amongst youth. And as we know, when a young person is consuming energy drinks, that leads to a higher heart rate, diabetes, and also unhealthy sleeping habits. Now that we understand how smartphones can have a negative effect on a young person's physical health, we can discuss how it can also have a damaging effect on a young person's mental health. Many times a young person, children, even adults, we spend hours at a time browsing through social media, basically through meaningless photos and videos. And what this does is it portrays a certain image of people's lives, showing nothing but the perfection, all the greatness in everybody's lives. So when a teenager is going through a hard time and they see nothing but all of these people having perfect lives on social media, it causes depression in that teenager, in that young person. And with what we know is since 2011, when cell phones became a phenomenon, the rise of depression also came with the rise of the usage in the smartphones. Additionally, because depression rose, so did suicide levels amongst young people. We're seeing nowadays that people are being cyberbullied and taking their own lives because they are not being protected, because a lot of times the adults in their lives are unaware of what's happening on these social media platforms. Additionally, the use of smartphones has been correlated to impulsive behavior, including the addiction to a smartphone itself, but not limited to more troubling and more serious consequences such as drug and alcohol abuse. Now, if you can imagine that you spent an hour browsing through pictures and videos online and lost track of time, imagine that this is a constant ritual going on right now with our youth, with our children, with our teenagers, where they're spending hours upon hours a day on social media. Where when I was young, I would spend time, like I said, with my cousins, with my friends, talking, playing, even if it was on the phone. Well, kids nowadays, they're not socially interacting, and that is how the overuse of smartphones is negatively impacting the social well-being of our youth. So basically, these children are losing the concept of what it is to be able to interact amongst one another. And studies have shown that children and teenagers are less likely to have sex, they're less likely to drive a car, and they're also less likely to move out of their parents' houses, which are all important steps in transitioning into an adult. Again, we all know the convenience a smartphone can provide, but are we considerate of the harmful effects that it has on our youth? We know that smartphones can affect young people physically, mentally, as well as socially. So let me ask you, the next time that you see a young person that you care about on the smartphone, what action will you take to ensure the protection from the harms at risk? Thank you.